Facebook can be configured to control which message goes to which person.
They're worried that they're going to have another Greece on their hands.
A little more asphalt, granite, dirt.
A federal judge blocked a Mississippi law that would have banned almost all abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy, the earliest limit in the U.S. Judge Carlton Reeves sided with the state's only abortion clinic, ruling that the law wasn't just unconstitutional, but part of a disingenuous and deliberate effort to overturn Roe v. Wade. He called the legislature's claims to be interested in women's health, quote, pure gaslighting. Interpol elected South Korean police official Kim Jong-yang as its next president, after an intense lobbying effort against frontrunner Alexander Prokopchuk, Russia's former interior minister. Critics in the US, Britain, and across Europe have accused Russia of abusing Interpol's Red Notice system to harass its political opponents. After President Trump derided a federal court ruling against his ban on granting asylum to migrants who illegally crossed the southern border, saying it was written by an Obama judge, Chief Justice John Roberts issued a rare response, saying, quote, "We do not have Obama judges or Trump judges, Bush judges or Clinton judges, and that an independent judiciary is something we should all be thankful for." Dolce & Gabbana called off its runway show in Shanghai today, after 3 promotional videos showing a Chinese woman struggling to eat Italian food with chopsticks were criticized as racist. Designer Stefano Gabbana appeared to defend them with even more racism, accusing the Chinese of eating dogs and calling them, quote, ignorant, dirty-smelling mafia in direct messages. The designer and his label apologized, saying their accounts were hacked and they have nothing but respect for China.
Last week, the New York Times revealed that Facebook hired a Republican opposition research firm called Definers Public Affairs to discredit an anti-Facebook group called Freedom from Facebook. One of the ways Definers tried to do that was by linking the group to George Soros, the Jewish billionaire and philanthropist. In a memo leaked last night, Facebook's outgoing vice president of communications, Elliot Schrage, took the blame for hiring Definers. Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg said that she didn't know about Definer's work, but that bringing up the supposed Soros connection wasn't intended to be anti-Semitic. But what the memo didn't say is that the group in question wasn't funded by George Soros at all. It was funded by this guy.
I'm a computer scientist, a technologist, and someone who cares deeply about America.
How did you feel when you found out that Facebook had hired a PR firm that was telling reporters that the group that you funded was actually funded by George Soros?
I wasn't surprised because he's just like low-hanging fruit in that regard. It was just a placeholder for some scary Jew in the world who's, participating in the scary Jews running the world. This is my little professional man cave. This is really the only original art that I've ever purchased of significance. This was an Andy Warhol print of the ad campaign.
How much does a Warhol cost?
At the time I bought it was in the $80,000 range.
Magerman made his fortune working for a quantitative hedge fund. He used some of that money to start Freedom from Facebook, after learning of the Cambridge Analytica revelations in March.
I was inspired by the ease with which they did what they did and the likelihood that other people were doing it without being detected. Freedom from Facebook is a media campaign intended to inform the public about the dangers that Facebook creates in society based on the technology that is built into it and the technology that can be built around it. If people want to be enslaved by technology because they get benefit out of it, they can make that choice as an informed choice.
We welcome everyone to this morning's hearing on Facebook, Google, and Twitter, examining the content filtering practices of social media giants.
In an ironic twist, even as Facebook was paying for work that's now being criticized as anti-Semitic, it was also flagging Magerman's group to the Anti-Defamation League. That's because of a sign protesters held up when a Facebook executive testified in July before the House Judiciary Committee.
They called it anti-Semitic because there were protesters in a congressional hearing that held up signs that had Mark and Cheryl, who are both Jewish, their faces on an octopus, which the ADL said is a historically anti-Semitic trope.
But it's not. It's historically an anti-monopoly trope. And that was the design behind it.
What do you make of the fact that in one way they were telling reporters that your group was funded by George Soros, and then on the other hand, they were calling up the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and having them put out a statement saying that your pictures were anti-Semitic?
They're just benefiting from the same Facebook group thought bubbles that they create that allow their platform to be so valuable to political groups and to advertisers. And that's the danger of Facebook, is that there can be simultaneously contradictory messages, and Facebook can be configured to control which message goes to which person, so you don't get the full picture of the world.
So you, unlike most Americans, don't use technology for an extended period of time every week. So has that impacted or informed your views on how technology works in society?
Right, well, so I for 25 hours on Shabbat, on the Sabbath, I don't use, among other things, I don't use technology. I would love for people to be freed from this existence of being attached to technology the other 6 days of the week, not just on Friday night and Saturday, because I think that humanity's better off being a little bit less efficient, but a little bit more civil.
Are you going to put more money into Freedom from Facebook?
I don't necessarily want to. I mean, I think
Why
that
not?
I thought it was a public service. You know, initially I gave them a budget and it was roughly $500,000, and they pretty much spent that. And I'm happy with the outcome.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I told him he would get a warm Mississippi welcome, and you did not disappoint. Yes!
It was supposed to be easy for Cindy Hyde-Smith. She got appointed to fill the seat of a retiring U.S. senator, and all she had to do was get elected to a full term. As a Republican in Mississippi, a state where these days, Republicans always win. But first, she has to win a runoff next Tuesday against Mike Espy, a former congressman and the first African-American to serve as Secretary of Agriculture. But it isn't really Espy who's posing the big problem for Hyde-Smith. It's Hyde-Smith herself.
You know, for anyone that was offended by my comments, I certainly apologize. There was no ill will, no intent.
Hyde-Smith is apologizing for this comment, which didn't play so well, particularly among Black voters.
He invited me to a public thing and got me on the front row.
Mississippi has seen more lynchings of Black people than any other state. It also has a rocky history when it comes to voting rights. Mississippi was the epicenter of one of the first major Black voter drives in the 1960s, where activists were famously murdered by Klansmen when trying to register Black voters. But earlier this month, Hyde-Smith said this. And then this week, a 2014 photo of her surfaced in the press, posing at the Jefferson Davis Library wearing a Confederate soldier's hat with a musket in hand. She'd posted it with the comment, "Mississippi history at its best." Hyde-Smith largely tried to ignore the controversies by ignoring the media. But after major corporate donors pulled their contributions to her campaign and Republicans in the state started fretting over her race, she finally gave that half-hearted apology at the debate. All this has Democrats hoping Mississippi could be a repeat of Alabama, where a surge in turnout from the state's sizable Black population helped push Democrat Doug Jones to an improbable win. In Alabama, Black voter turnout surged to 29% of the electorate, meaning they made up a larger portion of the electorate than the state's population overall. Mississippi's Black population is even bigger, nearly 38% of the state. But according to ABC News, Black voters were 31% of the electorate during the November election. That's below their 2012 high of 35%. And Barack Obama still lost the state that year by nearly 12 points. Espy's trying to maintain a broad appeal, framing himself as a pro-business Democrat and expressing support for the GOP tax bill. Here's how he addressed Hyde-Smith's racially charged comments during last night's debate.
No one twisted your comments because the comments were live. It came out of your mouth. And I don't know what's in your heart, but we all know what came out of your mouth.
Incendiary comments have come out of another candidate's mouth too, ultra-conservative talk show host Chris McDaniel, who recently said this when asked about the Black community in his state.
After 100 years of relying on big government to save you, where are you today? After 100 years of begging for federal government scraps, where are you today? We've been dead last for 100 years. 100 years. I mean the state of Mississippi.
McDaniel still won 17% of the vote in the general election, keeping the other candidates under 50% and triggering next week's runoff. It's a good bet that Hyde-Smith is going to win those McDaniel voters on Tuesday. That should be enough to keep Mike Espy from winning the race. But if he doesn't pull it out this time, there is hope. He can always do what Cindy Hyde-Smith did as a state legislator back in 2010. Give up on being a Democrat in Mississippi and start running as a Republican.
In March, Italy elected a new populist government, which took office promising to, quote, abolish poverty. Now, it's going to war with the European Union over its new proposed budget. The European Commission, which checks that member states are playing by the EU's rules, has to sign off on their budgets, and last month, it rejected Italy's, an unprecedented move.
La Commission n'est pas, n'a jamais été, ne sera jamais contre l'Italie.
The fight here is really a clash of worldviews, with Italy's desire to jumpstart its economy colliding with the Commission's obsession with fiscal discipline. Italy has been stuck in a slow growth rut for the past decade. So the populists want to boost government spending for the poor and elderly, and run a sizable budget deficit to help stimulate the economy and create jobs, even if doing so breaks EU rules. Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini has said Italians' right to health, jobs and pension come before any arguments of European bureaucrats. The EU, on the other hand, is more concerned about Italy's massive debt load, which it worries could lead to a Greece-style financial crisis. So it wants Italy to keep its budget deficit under control, even at the expense of job creation. The EU has demanded that Italy revise its budget, and today it took the first steps towards imposing billions of dollars of fines on the country. But Italy's government says that fines or not, it won't change a line. It's a financial game of chicken with high stakes for both sides. Naples is a stronghold of support for Italy's populist government and its fight against the European Union. The city has some of the worst deprivation in Europe, and the most expensive giveaways in Italy's new budget, including a minimum income of $900 a month for the poorest families, were election pledges made with this place in mind. At its heart is La Figlia del Presidente.
Accomodatevi, prego. Come va? Questa pizza è buona?
A local institution and a hugely popular place to talk politics and eat pizza. Lunchtime with some of the struggling local traders here is a taste of why the EU is preparing for a bloody battle.
Who here voted for the current government? Could you put your hands up if you did? All of you.
Perché è un governo nuovo e noi diamo la fiducia a un governo nuovo, sperando che fa le cose bene e non fa le cose come hanno fatto gli altri.
Perché vogliamo il cambiamento. Le cose, gli ultimi 20 anni di politica ci hanno solo distrutto. Hanno fatto tagli dappertutto, però all'italiano non hanno dato niente, hanno solo tolto.
I mean, how hard have the last 10 years since the financial crisis been for people here?
Allora, la mia storia, io ho sempre lavorato, sono 20 anni che ho sempre lavorato, Alla fine che cosa è successo l'anno scorso? Il periodo di Natale non me lo posso mai dimenticare. Mi è arrivato la lettera di licenziamento assoluto. Cioè, io con 2 bambini, con 450 euro al mese di pigione, sono rimasto. Non mi hanno dato liquidazione ancora, non mi hanno dato niente. Da un anno e mi trovo in mezzo alla strada. Io mi sono trasformato per portare il pane a casa.
Sì.
A lavorare io penso non vado più perché nessuno mi prende. Però poi come pensione io cosa prendo?
Devi aspettare
per prendere l'aria.
Io vorrei il reddito di cittadinanza, non per me che sono un imprenditore, ma per chi ne ha veramente bisogno. Persone veramente sono disperate, non sanno da che parte prendere iniziative.
And so I'm guessing you're backing your government in this fight with the European Union. Do you think it's the right thing to do, not to change this budget?
Sì. Crediamo... Se questo è l'unico modo di poter far fronte alle promesse fatte, sì.
Adesso che si sta creando e che si sta formando questo nuovo governo, noi speriamo in loro come se fossero i nostri guerrieri, i nostri generali, i nostri capitani, che partano all'attacco e vincono, almeno che ci portino una vittoria.
I'm interested to know, though, whether or not anybody understands the European Union's concerns here.
È una cosa che non che dice, vabbè, però tu prendi le persone che non lavorano, stanno a casa e hanno i soldi. No, perché chi avrà questi soldi ne farà qualcosa, avrà voglia di scendere di casa, avrà voglia di camminare per strada, di mangiare una pizza e magari se servono, come abbiamo sentito, dei lavori, possono anche dare una mano alla città di Napoli. Invece tutti vogliono far credere che i napoletani stanno qui ad aspettare il reddito di cittadinanza nel letto sdraiati oppure giocando con lo smartphone.
They're worried that they're going to have another Greece on their hands.
Diciamo che l'Unione Europea può stare tranquillo perché l'Italia è un popolo, gli italiani sono un popolo tranquilli, di persone serene, tranquille. Io non penso che arriviamo al punto come la Grecia.
Se non è successo fino ad oggi,
non
può
fino ad
succedere.
oggi non succederà mai più.
How much would you be prepared for the government to gamble with this budget?
Ma noi siamo creati per l'azzardo.
Bravo.
Noi rischiamo sempre. Questo è...
Fino ad oggi non abbiamo rischiato non per scelta ma perché ci è stato imposto. A questo punto ora ci stiamo, costi quel che costi, però basta alla fine averne un risultato che poi sia negativo o positivo. Non lo possiamo prevedere perché non ci hanno dato alternativa.
Because I mean, take Britain for example. Under the motto of taking back control from the European Union, let's decide to leave it. Would you be prepared to go as far as that?
Continuare a stare così serve
non
a
serve,
poco.
è inutile.
Non serve a niente,
stare
è solo
così.
una lenta agonia che non sappiamo dove ci porta, però nel frattempo...
Vuol dire cambiare queste realtà, vuol dire uscire dall'Europa, usciamo dall'Europa.
Senza problemi. Che aspettiamo?
The conventional image of whiskey conjures scenes of bucolic homesteads, a banjo or two, and usually some white guy waxing poetic about heritage.
One thing will stay the same: good drinks, with good stories to be told over them.
But a startup in San Francisco called Endless West is trying to change all that.
So we're making molecular whiskey, one molecule, one note at a time.
By making an aged whiskey called Glyph in a lab in the span of about 24 hours.
So we need to understand what makes different types of whiskeys and whiskey itself prototypically itself.
So essentially in this lab, you're trying to identify what makes up that flavor profile chemically so that you can then learn from it.
Exactly.
That chemical profile becomes the basis for the whiskey Endless West is creating. Basically, a pinch of this, a dash of that,
ethanol,
mixed together with medical-grade ethanol. It smells like vodka.
Yep. The only reason why any of this ultimately works is because there isn't anything in whiskey that you can't find anywhere else in nature. And so we can extract it from different fruit, plant, vegetable, yeast, wood.
Can we smell them?
Sure.
We can?
Yeah.
Oh, wild. Okay. Oh my God, I can never unsmell that. It's like cheese puffs.
Yeah.
And someone who hasn't had a bath for a while.
Yeah. This one is really important in whiskey and in wines. It gives a lot of the funk.
So just because something smells like ass doesn't mean it doesn't belong in the most delicious whiskey you've ever drunk.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks. I can't help but think I'm just gonna be drinking chemicals.
Chemicals is largely a pejorative connotation. The reality is that everything is chemical. Everything here is coming from nature. Think of it as like a tincture. If that's a safer word for you to think of, I mean, that's what it is.
It was time to do a blind taste test. Since my unrefined palate can't tell cider from apple juice, I called in this guy.
I do make my whiskey quite differently, but I like nerdy stuff. I like science, so I'm quite intrigued. I'm enthralled by the whole process and a different way of making a spirit from scratch. All right, so first up, number one, go ahead and just bury it in your face. Open up your mouth and really get that aroma everywhere.
Smells like I want to drink it, that's all I can tell you.
No? All right, let's go for it.
I've never used alcohol as mouthwash before.
I'm getting a lot of like apple, I'm getting some fennel. There's actually a lot of life in it.
Number two.
Seems like there's a dash of peated smoke in the background maybe, but
I think it's
generally...
Scotch because I'm not that crazy about it.
There you go, yep. Like, oh.
We proceeded to smell and taste 6 whiskeys, most of which I probably would never be able to afford. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like medieval.
A little more asphalt, granite, dirt.
This is really not my thing.
Yeah.
At this point, it's highly likely we were sourced.
As
My
well.
teeth feel great.
Yeah, good, good. Yeah, alcohol it's quite a health food.
Yeah. I can't believe this is your jobs. Where did I go wrong in life? But there was one in the lineup which definitely stood out. Number 3.
Scotch.
This one smells way different.
Yeah, there's like honey, nut, fruit. I'm not smelling a lot of grain influence. I'm tasting flavors I wouldn't normally taste, like amaretto type things, like apricot pit. There's a lot going on there, isn't it?
Yeah. Is this glyph? Is that where we're going?
This is either glyph or a really diverse whiskey that I've never tried before, which is totally possible. It's quite nice.
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whiskeys were revealed, and we were right. Your whiskey and a traditionally made whiskey, are they mutually exclusive?
The federal government certainly thinks so, which is why we can't just call it whiskey and call it a day. It's technically going to be called a spirit whiskey with natural flavors. If whiskey is a product, then yeah, what we make is whiskey. But if whiskey is a process, then no, we don't. And that's okay too. But the point is that they do the same thing, they're made of the same components, the product is the same, even if the process is different.
I don't know when I first had PTSD, but things have been wrong for a decade or more.
Within 60 days of coming back from Iraq, I put a loaded Beretta to my temple and pulled the trigger. At that point, I would try anything, even something as crazy as ecstasy.
What is the potential for MDMA?
There's the real potential for it to become part of the mainstream of PTSD treatment.
So I'm gonna take, I think, 200 milligrams of MDMA.